impressive one, but left much to be desired. Now Joe Burrow is seemingly healthy, with both him and Higgins entering their second year with some experience under their belts. And while Jamar Chase is an insane talent, we can't ignore that A.J. Green was targeted over 100 times last season and is out of Cincinnati. Actually, Higgins, Green, and Tyler Boyd were pacing season target totals of 117, 124, and 144 respectively before Burrow went down. Burrow is a talented young quarterback who can support more than one strong wide receiver season, as evidenced by last year, and will likely have to throw a lot again this year, with Cincinnati's defense likely being mediocre at best. Burrow averaged more than 40 pass attempts per game through the first 11 weeks, where all three of his starting receivers were top 20 in targets, while Higgins earned a target share north of 20%, so you get the point. Oh, and did I mention no receiver saw more deep ball targets than Higgins with Burrow under center, even though he only caught 6 of those 22 looks. There's a ton of room for improvement there, though, even if Jamar Chase has an impressive rookie campaign. Higgins has a 45 ADP on Underdog as the 22nd receiver off the board, and honestly, I'm okay with it. But you can no doubt get him a lot later on other sites where Chase is going a lot earlier than Higgins. Chase Claypool was the wide receiver 22 last season, finishing the year with 62 receptions for 873 yards and 9 touchdowns on 109 targets. He also rushed 10 times for 16 yards and 2 scores. He had a few monster games as a rookie and was targeted 8+ times in 7 of his last 10 games. Granted, Ben Roethlisberger was forced to throw a ton in 2020 thanks to an awful offensive line that couldn't generate anything in the run game, and a lead running back in James Conner who was banged up for most of the year. And now the Steelers drafted Najee Harris in the first round to hopefully solve some of those problems. But that doesn't take away from the fact that Pittsburgh has a history of drafting elite receivers. And if Claypool's rookie season was any indication, he could certainly be one of them. Now, I understand Claypool had plenty of bad games, and a lot of his season totals were buoyed by a 4-touchdown game in Week 5 against Philadelphia. But 72 touches and 11 touchdowns as a rookie, despite playing only 62% of snaps, can't be overlooked. And of the 32 receivers with at least 100 targets, Claypool was 10th in yards per reception and 6th in yards after catch per reception. It's only reasonable to assume that Claypool is on the field a lot more in year 2, especially considering he possesses the speed and size to be competitive anywhere on the gridiron. And while there have been some concerns about Ben Roethlisberger falling off for a while now, he still supported not 2, but 3 top 22 receivers last year. Given that Juju Smith-Schuster will likely be the wide receiver 3 this season, and Claypool has the skill set to perfectly complement the smaller Deontay Johnson, it's hard not to feel good about him as the wide receiver 28 on Underdog. 1,000+ yards and double-digit touchdowns is hardly out of the question here. And time for an honorable mention. I really wanted to feature Brandon Ayuk in this video, but a few things concern me. George Kittle and Deebo Samuel played a combined 15 games last year, and with Raheem Mostert healthy and Trey Sermon in the backfield, the run game should look a lot more like it did in 2019, where only the Ravens averaged more yards per game. I'm still high on the 25th overall pick from 2020 and could absolutely see him having a big year, but all of those factors could end up derailing some of that progress we saw from late 2020. A couple of other names to throw out there quickly. Laviska Shenault. 78 ADP is just a little bit too high for me. I think he is another second-year player who could be very good this year, but with Travis Etienne being drafted in the first round and the potential that he lines up a lot as a receiver, the fact that Marvin Jones was brought in the offseason, and that DJ Shark is still in this offense himself, there's going to be a good amount of mouths to feed. Not to mention that Trevor Lawrence is still a rookie quarterback, and we've yet to see what he can do. Sure, Urban Meyer can use Laviska Shenault all over the field, and that's excellent. But at 78, that seems a little bit too steep for me to be grabbing him this season. And Jalen Reagor's another one. 129 ADP is the only reason I'm throwing him in here. I'm not saying that I think Reagor's going to have a huge breakout season as a second-year receiver, and it's very possible that he will just simply forever be remembered as the guy who was drafted 1 pick before Justin Jefferson by the stupid Eagles. Yeah, I'm still salty about that. But here's the thing. Devonta Smith is out right now and week to week, potentially going to miss most of training camp in his rookie season. If Jalen Reagor builds a true rapport with Jalen Hurts going into both of their second years, maybe he pays off that 129 ADP in spades, and we're not really risking much grabbing him there. And finally, Michael Pittman Jr. He would have been one of the top options in this list, hands down, had Carson Wentz not become injured and Jacob Eason looking like the starting quarterback to begin the season. They have an absolute gauntlet through the first 5 weeks. Very difficult matchups. It's very possible that they go 0-5 to start the season. And while Pittman going into his second year was a clear breakout candidate, being drafted close to the 100 ADP range, he would have been one of my favorite options. I just can't go there right now, though.
Welcome to the Awesemo NASCAR Strategy Show for the Go Bowling at the Glen, which is tomorrow. We are back. We've gone 2 weeks without a NASCAR race, but we are back. Of course, we are sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. Come up here later on in the show. We'll tell you about Monkey Knife Fight, the great offer they have for the Awesemo viewers. Also, we will give you some plays that stick out to us. But before we get into what is going on with this NASCAR race, do want to let you know today's show is also brought to you by our new podcast, Betting You. Who will win the Heisman? Can Georgia finally dethrone Alabama? Which MAC teams should you be putting your money on? These questions and so much more are answered every Wednesday with Matt Jajeski and Ben Ross as they talk all things college football betting. We have episodes available now on nearly every podcast platform, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So go check them out today. As I mentioned, it's been 2 weeks since we've been here for this strategy show as NASCAR had a little brief hiatus due to the Olympics, but we're here to talk about Watkins Glen. We got a 90-lap race coming up here tomorrow. Phill, as always, great to be here on a Saturday afternoon, talk a little NASCAR DFS. Before we get into it, obviously, we're approaching playoff season, so I know that's something you've been looking into the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, if people haven't been around, like you've been just a normal person enjoying this 2-week NASCAR break, you may have missed that last Saturday I published a piece on Awesemo just basically highlighting where the playoff field stands and what their outlooks are for the final 4 races of the regular season. Of course, that includes Watkins Glen Sunday. Then you've got the NDGP coming up. After that, Michigan, and then Daytona. And then also what that means for these drivers going into the final 10 races of the playoffs. So I summarized all these drivers, and when it comes down to it, basically the drivers that you really need to be keeping your eyes on are 3 drivers in total. You've got Denny Hamlin, who has his spot in the playoffs because he's the regular season champion, but he could easily lose that spot to Kyle Larson, who has accrued so many points via his wins. You've got Kevin Harvick, who has an 82-point lead over the final spot. That seems pretty safe, but I mean, with a string of bad finishes, that could easily go away. But the race that everybody has their eye on right now is Tyler Reddick has that final 16th spot, but it's only a 5-point lead over his teammate Austin Dillon. So you could easily see that final spot get swapped back and forth numerous times. And that's not even counting the idea that we have a first-time winner happen in one of these 4 races. And then, it doesn't matter what Dillon or Reddick do, they're going to lose that final playoff spot. So a lot of interesting dynamics to keep in mind for these final 4 races.
One of the things of leading into today's race that came to my mind, Phil, is the fact of all these teams have had 2 weeks to prepare for this race. So how has that kind of gone into your mindset in terms of roster construction?
Right. It's interesting to try to figure out just how are teams making the most of this time. A lot of these teams have seen Watkins Glen in the past. This isn't like Road America or COTA where you're coming in with no race notes, but you do have the benefit of practice and qualifying to give you an idea of what the track is going to be like. This weekend there is no practice, there is no qualifying, but these teams have been here numerous times. So just how much do you need to prepare for Watkins Glen with this time? You've got the NDGP coming up next Sunday, so perhaps there's more effort, in simulation time for these drivers going into that track that a lot of them haven't seen. And then, Michigan is just going to be purely a horsepower race. And then Daytona, of course, Daytona is just randomness and chaos on Saturday night racing. So it will be interesting. And I think that you will see, I think you will see whatever efforts have been put into Watkins Glen and the Indy GP, since they're back to back. You probably will see those efforts manifested in these two races.
Of course, appreciate that everyone that's in here on a Saturday afternoon watching us. Of course, if you're not subscribed to Awesemo right here on YouTube, you got to do that. We got a ton of great shows for you each and every day. We got you jam-packed today with UFC and MLB coverage that'll kick off at 4 o'clock Eastern time. As we got myself and Greg, we talked about Monkey Knife Fight, some UFC picks for that. Then at 5 o'clock, he'll be joined by Pete Rogers Jr. for Live Before Lock. And then Greg will be back at 6 o'clock. Him and Gundack are going to get you ready for tonight's MLB slate. So be sure to check out that. And, of course, if you're not a member of Awesemo Plus, you want to get a little peek about what is behind the paywall today, our free premium data and tools, our MLB top stacks, and MMA fighter ranking. So if you're not an Also Plus member, gives you a little peek about what you can expect behind that paywall over there at awesemo.com. But Phil, let's get right into roster construction in terms of that. You talked a little bit there. I was looking at our ownership projections we have over at awesemo.com. Of course, you got to be an Also Plus member to seek that. Some of the things that kind of stuck out to me, you've got, some interesting ownership across the board in various salary ranges.
Right. For standard lineup construction, even though this is only just 90 laps, as you previously stated, I think this is still going to probably end up being a race where you're going to give consideration to a dominator. And yeah, with 90 laps, you really can't call anybody a dominator unless somebody does what Chase Elliott did at this race 2 years ago, where he led 80 of the 90 laps. But let's just call them lap leaders. This is a race that in numerous years before that 2019 race, where we would have a guy lead 35 laps and another guy would lead 25 laps. And both of those guys would end up optimal because DraftKings kept the salaries depressed. And I mean, that is what we're sort of dealing with this week, is that the most expensive guy, Kyle Busch, is only 10,900. You've got multiple potential dominators or lap leaders in this case here on DraftKings that are in that 10,000 and also in that 9,000 range. So when these salaries are depressed, what these drivers have to do with laps led and fastest laps, it gets pushed down. You only need so much for these drivers in order for them to hit the 5X or the 6X or maybe even the 7X range. So I'm going to say in cash games, since we just don't have this isn't Road America, we don't have just tons of place differential here waiting before us. This is going to probably be in cash, both sites where you're looking to build around one core driver that you think is going to be leading the majority of laps. But then in tournaments, you could possibly push that number up to 2 in case we do have a situation where one driver leads 35 to 40 laps and a second driver leads another 25 to 30 laps, and both of them score enough, hit value thresholds, and they pay off their salaries.
We'll talk about Brad Keselowski starting on the pole here in a little bit, because that's one of the drivers that kind of stuck out to me in terms of what his ownership is. Obviously we talk a lot about GPPs, but let's kind of look at the cash side of the equation here in terms of roster construction. I mean, is this a race that potentially you could have a significant amount of salary on the floor in cash as opposed to GPPs?
It possibly could, but the thing that I keep running into is that, okay, let's just say for kicks and grins that I'm going to take one core driver. That's going to be the guy that I'm projecting to lead the most amount of laps. And it's not this guy, but let's just say I'm going to say it's Kyle Larson at 10,200. Well, then I want to add in some place differential guys. And of course, Kyle Busch is going to be very popular. And then you've got Chase Briscoe, who's going to be popular. Once you start filling out the rest of your roster, you're probably not gonna be in a situation where you're leaving that much on the board. And in that case, for tournaments, if you can push that number past the typical $500 left over, to give yourself a unique build, because people will find it somewhat easy to build lineups since salaries didn't get pushed through the ceiling because of just the sheer amount of laps that are here. Yeah, that could be a very different way to build lineups, leaving yourself extra cash, and that could end up really paying off. But in cash, I think it's the typical, if you've got more than $500, then probably look to rejigger your lineup.
Got to mention a comment over from our NASCAR Slack channel from Mr. Moneybags. Goes, almost didn't recognize Phill, not sitting at a desk with all his work binders behind him. Hashtag baller.
I am out of the file dungeon for today. We'll see if it continues to work.
But of course, as I just mentioned over in the YouTube chat, if you have any questions for Phill about today's race, be sure to line those up in, whether it's on YouTube, also in Slack. We'll get to those questions as we do go on. But let's talk about our tier number 1 drivers. So these will be the drivers in the 10K and up range over on DraftKings. So we've got 5 of them this week. We've got Kyle Busch starting 20th, Chase Elliott starting 11th, Martin Truex Jr. starting 9th, Kyle Larson starting 4th, and Kurt Busch starting 17th. So as you look at that, obviously you got some place differential there with Kyle Busch starting in 20th, Kurt Busch starting 17th, is you got place differential there, and then you got 3 drivers who are starting in the top 11. Is there one that sticks out to you that you believe is in your top place for this week?
I love Kurt Busch, and quite frankly, if DraftKings is going to give me Kurt Busch starting 17th at $10,000, but make me pay $900 more for Kyle Busch for just 3 more spots, I'm going to take Kurt Busch. At this track, the last 3 years, of course, we didn't race here last year because of COVID-related restrictions on athletic activities in the state of New York. Kyle's finishes have gone 11th, 3rd, and 7th. Well, if I look at Kurt, 10th, 9th, and 6th, so it's the same top 10 potential. And when I look at Kurt's recent finishes at road courses, we've got 4th, 6th, we've got a disappointing 27th at Coda, but remember that was in the rain and Kurt was dealing with all sorts of issues, and that was really before Chip Ganassi got their crap figured out. And then 4th at the Daytona road course, and then 4th back at the Charlotte Roval. Well, if I look at Kyle, yes, he's got pretty good finishes, but there's always something really weird about Kyle when it comes to the stadium courses at Charlotte and Daytona. So, I mean, I feel like with Kurt, I'm getting a way more consistent driver at a cheaper price, and all I'm doing is sacrificing 3 place differential spots. And when you look on FanDuel, that's a $2,000 salary difference. I really like Kyle. I really like the Joe Gibbs drivers. I highlighted that in the preview. I highlighted that in Gas and Go, which will be out tomorrow morning. Talked about it in the betting article. But purely when we're looking at salaries and what's the upside, I'm not going to really project Kyle to lead. So in that case, I'm going to take the driver that has the same top 10, same top 5 potential as him, but is coming in much cheaper.
When you look at Chase Elliott, 11th, he is 10,600 on DraftKings. Martin Truex Jr. starting 9th, 10,400. How do you evaluate them as a top place?
I never want to go 100% on a driver in a road course, but Chase feels almost as like a sure thing this week. You've got a little bit of place differential. You've got the history with back-to-back wins here at Watkins Glen. He's done it from the pole. He did it from the 3rd starting position before. Chase showed at Road America, you can stick him all the way in the back of the field and he can still march his way forward. And when you look at BetMGM, he's the favorite right now at plus 200, which is, for a cup race, those are really, really slim odds compared to most weeks. Martin has been good here before. He's got the win at this track back in 2017, but for whatever reason, of late, he gets you a top 10 finish, but he has not been the force du jour as he has been in the past. And maybe part of that problem is that he's still the same road course driver, but Chase has just excelled to such a point that he makes the rest of the field look like a bunch of Xfinity drivers trying to keep up with him. Just for this instance, over the last 10 road races, Chase is averaging 15 fastest laps and 27 laps led. Meanwhile, Martin is only averaging 9.8 fast laps and 8 laps led. These two are in totally different directions. Yes, Martin is starting in front of Chase, but I think Chase is just running so pure right now, running so good. We know the horsepower is definitely gonna be there. If it's a single entry, I'm building a lineup around Chase. If it's 3 max, I'm building all 3 of those lineups around Chase. I really, really do think that he's going to be a core play tomorrow for me, whether it's DraftKings or FanDuel, and definitely looking to him to be the winner once again.
I know one of the things you wanted to mention at the beginning of the show, and apologize I didn't get to it, but weather concerns for tomorrow. Just pulling up the Weather Channel app here on my phone. So we've got a high of 88, low of 76, chance of rain 50%, partly cloud early, scattered thunderstorms developing in the afternoon. So I guess how was your thoughts on in terms of weather in terms of this race?
Oh God, I didn't want to bring it up because I just want a stinking road course without the rain. I don't want Coda all over again. Although thankfully with that forecast, it doesn't look like we're anticipating just showers like we had in Austin. Don't adjust your lineups because of rain. We don't have a metric to say that such and such driver is better in the rain. And if you want to try to isolate Coda from the rest of these races, I think you're just adding a bunch of noise into your process. Whatsoever happens with the rain happens. And remember, this is a big track. It could easily be raining in one portion of the track and sunny in another. So it could happen. It could throw a wrench into how these drivers perform tomorrow, but don't start messing around with lineups just at the fear of a 50-50 shot of rain.
Do want to let you know that we do have 2 new YouTube channels that you need to go ahead and subscribe to. If you love what we do for DFS and you're going to love what we're doing for season-long fantasy football and sports betting, just click the link in the YouTube chat to subscribe to these channels and make sure to turn those notifications on too. We'll be producing sports betting and fantasy football content around the clock, so make sure to stay up to date with videos from your favorite Awesemo hosts. And if you want to check out the other free content we're offering, you can find our fantasy football rankings in front of the paywall on the Awesemo.com fantasy football tab. And for sports betting, you can check out our Awesemo tab for access to Odd Shopper and for our MLB betting tools, which include our sports betting model and player props tool. And of course, if you're watching us, listening to us, and you're here in my home state of Florida, sports betting is coming to Florida here in October. The Department of Interior just approved the deal that Governor DeSantis did with the Seminole Tribe. So sports betting is coming to Florida. So be on the lookout for that. But let's move on to tier number 2. This will be the drivers in the 8K and 9K range. So we got William Byron starting 15th, Joey Logano starting 2nd, Denny Hamlin starting 6th, Ryan Blaney 3rd, Brad Keselowski 1st, Christopher Bell 7th, Alex Bowman 10th, Kevin Harvick 5th, Chase Briscoe 27th, Ross Chastain 12th, Tyler Reddick 13th. Let's start off with Brad Keselowski on the pole. You mentioned beginning of the show about, look, maybe it's a one dominator build, and we got to look at Brad Keselowski because he is starting on the pole. And could this be a situation where he's that guy that maybe you look to? And because right now, when we're talking about leverage plays, Brad Keselowski is a leverage play.
Yeah. It appears the majority of people are saying, no, there ain't no way I'm not playing a pole sitter at a road race that isn't Chase Elliott or Kyle Larson. Just amazing leverage for Keselowski. You look at this history here. Keselowski is a former winner at this track. Back when it was just 2 road courses on the schedule, Watkins Glen and Sonoma, Keselowski always did just so much better here. Penske as a team has multiple wins here. It's been very apparent in the Xfinity series, but they've carried that over here into the Cup scene. The thing that I highlighted in Gas and Go is just how much starting position has mattered at this track in terms of winners. I believe the number was that since 2004, only 2 drivers have won at Watkins Glen who started outside of the 8th position, and that was Joey Logano, who has a has a series of wins here, especially in the Xfinity Series, and then Tony Stewart, who was a good road racer in his own right. So we've got these narratives about where the driver usually starts. You've got this narrative about Keselowski and his history here, and it hasn't been fantastic to say the least. But I mean, at least when he comes to Watkins Glen, he's still been a potential top 5, top 10 threat. But I really do think that if Keselowski can outpace his teammates and take advantage of that starting position, much like Chase Elliott did 2 years ago, he could easily lead. Let's lead the first segment. Lead how many laps, and then if he can hang around the top 5 for the majority of the day at $9,000 on DraftKings, he can easily pay that off. I mean, I think people are really underscoring just what you need fantasy points wise from Keselowski, and with that starting position, he could easily pay that off in terms of the few amount of dominated points that he needs.
Next driver I want to bring up is William Byron, because we are seeing ownership there starting 15th, 9,800 over on DraftKings, 10,800 on FanDuel. Obviously, there's some place differential there starting 15th. Do you want to be a little under the weight on the field at what we're seeing right now?
Oh, yeah. I definitely want to be underweight against the field, because Byron's ownership projection right now, I mean, it looks like people are just searching for place differential, and they found a guy that's starting in the latter teens that for the most part, Byron is perceived as a good road racer, but Lord, this year, the numbers have just not been good for him. We're talking about 33rd at Road America, 35th at Sonoma. He's got 11th at Coda. Remember, that was in the rain. And then a 33rd at the Daytona Road Course. So, for this season, it has not been good for Byron. This is a track. He's only got 2 starts in the Cup Series. He's got a 21st in 2019 and then an 8th in 2018. And just momentum wise, Byron really hasn't been that hot. He's been kind of milquetoast to say the least. So at $9,800 on DraftKings, that $10,800 salary on FanDuel, that's a little more understandable when we really are putting a focus on place differential and finishing position. But at Byron's projected ownership, I really would be looking to go elsewhere for tomorrow's race.
Another driver that people are looking at and is in his tier, his salary is only 8,300 over on DraftKings, and that's Chase Briscoe starting 27th. Obviously, that 27 is a number that people are looking at in terms of that place differential. Do you think you're going to find yourself getting to a ton of Chase Briscoe? Yeah,
and this is a driver that I'm not afraid to embrace that chalk. Like he's going to be he's probably going to end up being the highest owned driver in the majority of tournaments that people play, especially the higher up that you go on DraftKings. And it's all right. I mean, quite frankly, he's underpriced on both sites. I was projecting about a $9,100 Chase Briscoe earlier this week, and the fact that we're getting him just a hair above 8,000 for a driver, out of everybody in this field, this is the driver that I feel the most confident that can actually gain place differential and put himself inside the top 10. Compared to everybody else around him in where he's starting on the grid, he's got just superior top 10 odds compared to everybody else. And when you look at just similar pricing, it's kind of the same story. So I really do think that Chase is going to just soak up a ton of ownership, but this is one of those scenarios where you don't overthink things. You don't get galaxy brain trying to fade a really good road course driver with place differential. When these things line up, you just embrace it and you go on and find differentiation elsewhere.
Is it one of those things in cash? You just sit there and say, as you're building your lineup, just put Chase Briscoe in there, lock him in, and just kind of build your lineup around him?
Yeah, don't get silly. Don't think that you can build a cash lineup on either side tomorrow without playing Chase Briscoe. You are paying the rake and donating to the field if you make that decision.
You mentioned about, the driver to love in Briscoe there. Is there someone in this tier that's maybe on the I don't really love for tomorrow?
Oh, there's something very funny going on with Kevin Harvick that he's all the way down at 8,500. And it's almost like DraftKings is just trying to slowly entice you and pull you in there, saying, yes, he's a good road racer. He's got a good history at road courses. We've underpriced him. Wouldn't you like to play Mr. Harvick this week? And sure, I guess that's a scenario, but man, I don't want to project him to be a lap leader. Yeah, he might run into a few laps with off-sequence pit strategy, but you're not playing him in cash starting fifth. I think your best hope for Harvick is that he's going to be one of these weird options where maybe Briscoe has mechanical issues or gets wrecked out or something, like it does rain and something just odd happens. And then you've got Alex Bowman, who should probably see some more ownership, who's been a fairly consistent road racer. You're going to have one of these scenarios and include Christopher Bell in this debate, who I really do like as a, not like a main dominator, but it's a guy that could get up their lead maybe 5 to 10 laps. That all these guys fail, and Harvick just does what he does, finishes with a top 5, and ends up paying off just because he was the one guy that didn't fail.
The one thing that I did notice this morning when I was doing some prep here for the show and comparing the salaries on DraftKings and on FanDuel in terms of these drivers, the salary difference that really stuck out to me was a driver that you brought up a little earlier in the show, and that's Denny Hamlin. While he's 9,400 over on DraftKings, he's 12,000 over on FanDuel, which is only $500 less than Kurt Busch, and it's more than, Kyle Busch. He's more than Kurt Busch as well. What's your thoughts on Denny Hamlin at $12,000 over on FanDuel?
Hamlin makes sense on DraftKings at 9,400. It's the same question that I've got for Logano, Blaney, and Keselowski, all in that same range. They're underpriced. Can they lead enough laps, get enough fastest laps where they maintain position and end up paying off? And at that price here on DraftKings at 9,400, that is in the discussion. But Lord, at $12,000, you are needing Hamlin to be probably the top lap leader tomorrow. And that, once again, this probably has something to do with just how good Chase Elliott has been. But over the last 3 races here at Watkins Glen, Hamlin's only averaging 0.7 laps led per race and 1.7 fastest laps. He's got an average finish at 7th. He's not even averaging 40 DraftKings points per race here over the last 3 years. And then when you look at consistency with the last 10 road races, Hamlin's still not even peaking above 39 DraftKings points and only averaging 3 laps led per race. Hamlin's in a boat where you can probably bet that he's going to be a 10th to maybe a 5th place finish, but anything beyond that, the numbers just don't suggest that that's what you're going to get out of Hamlin tomorrow.
I mean, I just kind of sense what you said there a moment ago about Christopher Bell, in terms of over on the FanDuel side of the equation. Let's spend $800 less. So let's get the Christopher Bell instead of Denny Hamlin.
Yeah. God. And I really don't like 11,200 for Bell either. I mean, at that similar price range, man, I can save some money and go down to Busch. I can save some money and go down to Byron. I can go up just a hair more to Joey Logano, who I really like as a potential winner tomorrow. But over here on DraftKings, he's 8,800. He's run. I don't want to call it checkers and wreckers for Bell, because that's not the kind of driver that he is. But you've got second at Road America. He won the Daytona Road Course, and then the other 2 finishes this year have been 24th or worse. So I think that, and considering just how good Joe Gibbs has been here over the years, even though that's only resulted in 1 win, that was with Martin Truex Jr. back in 2017. I really do like the prospects of Bell coming in, moving to the lead, taking that Joe Gibbs horsepower, and possibly leading, like I said, somewhere in that neighborhood of 5, 10, maybe 15 laps. That makes a lot of sense on DraftKings, but that $11,200 price tag on FanDuel, I think you are needing Bell to be a top lap leader tomorrow.
Of course, today's show is sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. Their player prop based contests are so easy to play. They don't require a time commitment that other DFS sites require in order to compete. And with Monkey Knife Fight, you are in charge. All you got to do is head over to monkeyknifefight.com, choose the game you want to play, your contest type, your buy-in, and even better, Monkey Knife Fight has an instant first match deposit of up to $100 when you sign up with the promo code Awesemo. And before the show, me and Phil were talking about some Monkey Knife Fight plays, and the one that you pointed out to me was Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin, the number 16.5.
Yeah, Monkey Knife Fight has both given them the same number of 16.5. And in that case, and I am probably just way too over the moon for Joey Logano this weekend. I mean, I've been talking about it for a couple of weeks now, but with 16.5, without any laps led points, you just need a fourth place finish or better. And I mean, that's what Logano has been doing for the majority of the past few races. You look at his finishes, you had 15th at Road America, but then it went fourth, third, second. He has been on such a strong run here, and people will get scared off because his last three finishes here at Watkins Glen have been pretty poor, 23rd, 37th, and 24th, but the finish before that was a victory. He's run really well here. We just talked about Denny Hamlin, how I'm projecting him for a finish somewhere in that 10 to 6th range. And if that's what happens, then he's not getting above 16.5 points tomorrow, not giving him any laps led points. So I do think that if you're looking for just a simple more or less to get into, we're taking the more on Joey Logano and we're taking less on Denny Hamlin.
And the one thing, and I talk about this on the MMA Strategy Show, when it comes to Monkey Knife Fight, you got to try to, sometimes you can find an edge getting in there a day or two, before the race is going to happen, because these lines can change. So that's one of a pro tip over at Monkey Knife Fight. Try to jump on these lines when you can, when you see one. I talk about a lot on the MMA Strategy Show, but there's sometimes lines I just say, you got to go hammer that line right now, because that number may not be what you want it to be there. But of course, they are the sponsor of this show. Let's move on to tier number 3. This will be the drivers in the 7K and 6K range. So we got Chris Buescher starting 24th, Matty D starting 14th, Daniel Suarez starting 21st, Ryan Newman starting 28th, Michael McDowell 25th, Eric Jones 22nd, Eric Amarola 8th, Bubba Wallace 26th, Cole Custer 19th, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. 18th, and Austin Dillon starting there in 16th. In terms of salary differences between DraftKings and FanDuel, there were 3 drivers that really stuck out to me in terms of this tier. One is Matty D, 7,600 over on DraftKings, 8,600 or 8,300 over on FanDuel. Just kind of correlate that. The guy that's just above him in terms of DK salary, Chris Buescher, he's only 6,800 over on DraftKings. Chris Buescher starting 21st versus 14th. Then you got Ryan Newman, who's 4,500 over on FanDuel, 7,300 over on DraftKings, and then Eric Amarola, 7,000 on FanDuel, 6,800 over on DraftKings. So I guess in terms of the FanDuel side of the equation, in terms of those three drivers, what's kind of your take?
I really like Buescher on FanDuel. Last 10 races at road races, he has yet to finish outside of the top 20. He's got a top 5 in there. He's got 4 top 15 finishes. Kind of projecting him to do the same thing. His last 3 races here at Watkins Glen, and remember this is with JTG Doherty. You've got 13th, 20th, and 11th. So a step up in equipment. I think that Buescher is probably looking at a potential another potential top 15. Just that alone at 7,800 on DraftKings, that's going to be kind of pushing it. Probably he's probably safer for cash than he is as a tournament play. But at 6,800 on FanDuel, that's a play that I really like. Matty D, I have to think that his salary is getting baked up due to what he most recently did here at Watkins Glen. Back when in 2019, he was still racing in the Levine Family Racing 95. team doesn't even exist anymore. But remember, that was a Toyota affiliated car at that time, and he finished sixth. You look at what he's done since he got out of that car, since he started driving for the Wood brothers. You've only got one top 10, and it happened most recently at Road America. And everything else, there's been a lot of finishes that have been 23rd or worse. I really do not like Matty D's prospects. Matty D notoriously this year has needed restarts in order to bump up his position. And Watkins Glen typically is a clean race. This is a race that we might have a few spin outs, people, racing a little too close together into the turns, but NASCAR generally holds their yellow flag and just lets people get going again, and then the race meanders on. They don't throw local or full course cautions for something that happened, isolated on turn 9. So if this is going to be a green race that is just going to continue to run and accumulate laps, that really does not play into Matty D's favor. And you brought up Ryan Newman, and I've been pounding this drum all week. Newman is not a safe play. You call it age, call it lack of equipment, diminishing skill, whatever you want to say. Newman has not been running good in road races. His finishes in reverse order, they go 32nd, 33rd, 24th, 20th, 31st, 19th, 32nd, 35th, and then you've got a 7th in the Sonoma race in 2019, and then 11th at the Charlotte Roval in 2018. So, I mean, you got to go back 8 road races before you can find something encouraging about Newman, and it's just not there. And with this race projected to be pretty green, assuming that we don't, have a ton of rain that affects the race, I think if you're playing Newman for place differential, you're probably playing a guy that's going to start 28th and maybe finish his day in 25th. Just nothing that you're looking for either in cash or tournaments.
When we're talking about tournaments, there's definitely some leverage plays to potentially look here. I mean, Eric Amrola, he is starting 8th, but, if he's someone that you think can, stay up there, in the top 10, I think he's someone to potentially look at. As you look at some leverage plays here of drivers, there's some drivers who we do see getting some ownership, but Eric Amrola is one of these guys we're just not seeing people wanting to get to.
Yeah. A couple of names stick out to me. You've got Eric Jones. He's playing in the Xfinity race today, so he's going to get a little extra track time. We'll see how that goes for him. Even though he's in what we would call best mid-tier equipment, he was still, I think, had the 5th best odds just because of how good of a road course driver he is. But even though he's been in a step down in equipment this year for Richard Petty, he still has managed to finish in the top 20 in all of these road course races. Now, he only starts 22nd, so you're thinking, okay, really, what is his ceiling? What can he actually grab? Thus, on DraftKings at $7,000, you might be looking elsewhere, but at $5,500 on FanDuel, that's an easy path for him to be a value there. The name that's really jumping off, and I think he's going to be pretty popular, it's been definitely gaining momentum, is Austin Dillon. He starts 16th. In years past, he just would have been an automatic. You can't play this guy. He has not been good. And really, before he got his act together, it really has not been good. The Daytona Road Course this season, he finished 34th. You go back to the Charlotte Roval, it was 19th. He missed the Daytona Road Course race in 2020 because he contracted COVID-19. And then before that, 23rd, 31st, 24th, and 39th. But he's been working on his craft. He's got a good teammate that's a road course racer in Tyler Reddick, and he's rattled off 3 straight top 13 finishes. So starting 16th, he can pick up a little bit of place differential. Yes, you're not exactly excited about him picking up 3, 4, maybe 5 positions, but at $6,100 on DraftKings and $6,000 on FanDuel, that's fine. Let him pick up 3 spots. Let him bring home another top 13 finish, and I'm good to go. I mean, your options down here in cash on DraftKings are: I can chase place differential with James Davison, who we'll talk about in a second. I can go up to the likes of Bubba Wallace, who looks to be carrying a bit of ownership himself, or I can take Dylan, who honestly probably has the highest ceiling in terms of actual finishing position out of all of these guys, and could easily outscore these dudes just because of finishing points.
I mean, we talked about a little bit earlier about Chase Briscoe of how, how much you like him in his spot. He's starting 27th. Bubba Wallace is starting 26 at 6,600 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's only 4,000. I mean, is he borderline a safe play?
Oh, Bubba in road courses, that safe doesn't. They're just not correlated. Bubba's got that. I mean, Bubba was, I think, a couple of laps down at Sonoma, and somehow through the magic of Michael Jordan being at the track, he was able to get his laps back and then finish 14th. But everything else, you look at his history, its finish is just kind of scattered all throughout the 20s. The thing that you're hoping with Bubba is that since this is a Toyota affiliated ride, that whatever they're doing setup wise at Joe Gibbs to really help these cars excel, that it carries over for Bubba. We saw this with the Levine Family Racing 95. That car did good. You go back to the days of Furniture Row, not just the 78 with Martin Truex Jr., but the 77 when Eric Jones was in that car. That was a top 10 car. So if the setup can help Bubba, and Bubba, his road racing talent, it's definitely not there. He definitely needs to work on it. But if this is more about horsepower and setup than it is actual talent, then Bubba could easily find himself with another top 15 finish. If you want to play Bubba in cash while you hold your nose, I get behind that, and I'll probably end up there myself. But I think just because of the wide range of outcomes that Bubba has, he's probably better suited for tournaments.
Of course, we've been mentioning about the ownership projections we have over at Awesemo.com. If you want to get access for those ownership projections, that top driver tool, and so much more, you can sign up for an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. This includes full access to all the premium content and tools we have over at Awesemo.com. It's the tools that have made Alex Awesemo Baker #1 DFS player in the world. And if you're a new user of Awesemo Plus Platinum, then you can take advantage of the promo code we have for this show, which is NASCAR Strategy Show. All caps, one word. That's NASCAR Strategy Show for 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Of course, if you're just looking to play NASCAR DFS, you can sign up for a NASCAR weekly package for only $9.95. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. It is anytime I'm building my lineups, whether we're talking NASCAR or any other sport, ownership projections are the very first thing that I'm looking at, because at the end of the day, I'm going, how can I get leverage on this field? When you're getting into these big GPPs, I always talk about this on the MMA show. I'm always looking who are the fighters that are under 20%. Who can I get to? Maybe this week it's Brad Keselowski. Maybe that's the guy because of what we're seeing in terms of his ownership. Let's talk about the final tier here. So let's be the drivers that are underneath 6K on DraftKings. James Davison, who you mentioned briefly there for a moment, he starts 36. Corey LaJoie 29th. Anthony Alfredo 31st. Ryan Preece 23rd. RC Henderson 37th. Justin Yaley 30th. Kyle Tilley 33rd. Josh Bilicki 34th. Garrett Smithley 32nd. Quinn Hoff 35th. James Davison, you mentioned him before. DraftKings 5,900, and he's almost bare minimum on FanDuel at 2,500.
Yeah, this is quite the range of approaches by these two sites. DraftKings looks at Davison, who of course has road racing background due to his time in the Indy Series. They see this starting position and they're like, shoot him up. We're gonna get hella aggressive on this. And $5,900, it really does put you in a conundrum if you want to play Davison. I threw this idea out there on Twitter, and oddly, one of the people that liked the conundrum was James Davison himself. So never forget that athletes are constantly searching Twitter to see what people are saying about them. But you look at Davison's short cup career here at road courses, his best finish has been 23rd. That happened at the Daytona road course, where there was a little bit of shenanigans going on late in that race with rain and caution flags, and he was able to finish 23rd. Everything else has typically been a finish in the mid-20s. So if Davison is going to give that to you, then at 5,900, you're still not sniffing at the bare minimum 5x. So that's why I think in cash, your better option is like if you're down here at this $6,000 range, I like Corey LaJoie better. Corey's got 3 straight finishes of 21st or better at road courses. His finishes here at Watkins Glen, they have not been good by any means, but he has definitely improved as a road course driver. And in tournaments, you really do need Davison to find his way to, let's just say, like 17th or 18th place at a minimum. And I really don't think without attrition tomorrow that you're not going to get that out of Davison. That said, it does leave you with this interesting quandary over on FanDuel. He is he's nearly bare minimum at 2,500. So what kind of lineup can I build with a bunch of studs and one Davison picking up what he gets? You're probably going to put together a lineup that you really like, but quite honestly, unless it is just a mess of a race, these guys that are priced down this far, they generally never make the optimals in road courses. So the whole idea of a stars and a scrub lineup might be appealing on FanDuel, but I'm going to recommend just stay away from it.
Looking at Ryan Preece here, starting 23rd, 5,500 over on DraftKings, 5,000 over on FanDuel. Just hearing what you said there, do you want to get to any Ryan Preece?
I'm going to say on FanDuel, not so much on DraftKings because I only do 20 max on DraftKings, but on FanDuel because the entry point is cheaper. We're talking about $37.50, and you've maxed out the 25-cent contest over there. I probably will end up with some Preece. Definitely not a cash play. Starting 23rd, he's in a bit of a spot where it's going to be tough for him to really maximize his day. But quite frankly, you get over that 40th place finish at Road America. You remember he had his issue in qualifying, had to go to a backup car, and it just so happened that the backup car was a jalopy. I mean, he was out there driving a Ford Pinto that went absolutely nowhere. Finished dead last. But before that, 21st, 15th, 9th, and 14th. So if we're somewhere in that range, and of course I'm not going to give Preece another top 10 projection like he ended up with at the Daytona Road Course, but if we're going to end up somewhere in that 15th to 21st place range for Preece, that can work out on FanDuel at just $5,000. I'm not so big a fan of it on DraftKings. Like I said, if you're in that area, I'm gonna probably just try my best to get up to Corey LaJoie. But if you're doing 150 max, then having some shares of Preece is a good idea.
I think the question becomes is if you're using Fantasy Cruncher to develop your lineups, what do you do with this final tier? I mean, are you sitting there and just Xing out certain drivers because you're just like, you know what, I don't want to have that driver in a lineup? I mean, what kind of group rule setting would you set up?
Yeah, for Fantasy Cruncher tomorrow, I'm probably going to have a build rule where I'm going to put all of my potential dominators together, and it's going to be give me at least one with a maximum of 2. And in that case, there probably will be some lineups that try to shove in a Ryan Preece, an RC Anderson, who sounds like somebody that my grandpa would have played dominoes with, Justin Haley starting 30th, Kyle Tilley, what have you. And just to avoid that, I'm probably going to do, like I said, I'm going to go through there and I'm going to click these guys off because I don't want exposure to these guys. They have such limited ceilings and such limited floors in races like this. They're not going to be the key that unlocks lineups for you.
Who's the driver that has the highest upside in this tier?
Looking at price wise, I think it's Justin Haley. Haley's going to have experience from today's Xfinity race. He's raced in 3 of the 4 road course races this year. and he had a dead last finish at Coda. Of course, we know the circumstances with that, but his other finishes were 25th at Road America and 24th at the Daytona Road Course. So at 5,200 on DraftKings, $3,000 on FanDuel, if he's gonna take this vehicle, pick up 5-6 spots, then that works in 150 max. Like, once again, if you're doing 3 max, if you're doing 20 max, I'm probably staying away from Haley. But if you're expanding to 150 max and you want someone cheap to try to fit in as many of these, like you're going to do a 2 Dominator plus a Kyle Busch lineup, then Haley probably makes that lineup happen.
Of course, if you do have any questions, line those up in the chat. We'll get those in here before we wrap up this edition of the Awesemo Strategy Show. Of course, be sure to subscribe also right here on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up button, hit that notifications bell so you know when new shows are live here on the channel. Of course, we'll have shows for you all day today with UFC coverage and also MLB coverage to get you ready for tonight's UFC and MLB slate. I think the guys over on the deeper dive yesterday helping me cash a little on MLB. Haven't been playing a ton of MLB DFS this year, but using the tools and data we have over at Awesemo and listening to the guys on deeper dive and live before lock was able to get a nice little cash there last night. So just kind of shows you how good our projections and our guys here are at Awesemo.com. You mentioned about the Xfinity race. I know it seems like we usually get questions about that, of your take on the Xfinity race.
Yeah, there's a lot of good names in that Xfinity race here coming up at, I believe it's 4 o'clock here in a couple of hours. The betting favorite is Austin Cindric. The Fords have just been so good in the Xfinity series here of late. I believe that out of the last 5 victories, 4 of them have gone to Ford, and all 4 of them have happened to go to Roger Penske. And Penske only has 1 entry in today's race, and that's Austin Cindric, who we all know is a really good road course racer. If you're not looking at Cindric, and I think in Xfinity you are just looking at a singular Dominator build with their with the fewer laps that they're running, then you're looking at Dinger. Dinger was going to win this race in 2019, but Cindric tracked him down, ended up passing him with 2 laps to go. The finish isn't going to look that good because Dinger's car got thrown out after technical inspection for whatever was they deemed a violation or wrong with that car. But over the last 10 races, Allmendinger actually has more road course victories than Cindric himself. So it's really just a decision of who of these 2 do you like better, and then adding in as many of the place differential drivers as you can. In terms of I don't know if you've done any crunch. I was just kind of do a dummy crunch here. Who are the drivers that you're getting a lot to, and maybe you're not liking that you're getting a lot to them? Oh, well, if people have the top drivers tools, of course, besides having ownership and then showing you the chances of being a top 2 Dominator or a top 6 percentage, you also have the projections in there for both DraftKings and FanDuel. And if I'm looking at these projections, it looks like William Byron is going to show up a whole lot more than I'm comfortable with. And we already discussed the blemishes that I have with Byron. And another guy that's going to show up quite a bit, it looks like, is actually going to be at his price point is going to be Ryan Newman. Newman is getting a healthy projection. And when I'm building lineups and that keeps going on, I'm probably just going to have to go in there and manually adjust that projection down, because I just do not feel safe with Ryan Newman tomorrow. I will tell you, as I did my dummy crunch, a lot of Justin Haley. A lot of Justin Haley. Yeah. Yeah, that would be something where I would sit there and go, okay, I need to adjust that cap on him. But yeah, that was the guy that was coming up the most, just in kind of a dummy crunch for me. A lot of Kyle Busch, was not getting a decent amount of William Byron. Austin Dillon coming up, and I think we talked about him a little bit there. I'm not sure if we talked about Eric Jones, but Eric Jones coming up a lot as well. Yeah. We mentioned Jones and just how, even though he's been in worse equipment than what he's typically been in the last couple of years, that he's still managing to take this Richard Petty car and finish in the top 20 with it. If I'm this isn't DraftKings or FanDuel, but if I'm looking over here at BetMGM, looking at all of their different bets, I'm scrolling down here, and of course they don't offer top 20s, but if I find Eric Jones, he's plus 400. Now that is definitely pushing it for Eric Jones, but you want to tell yourself a story. Eric Jones, 3 starts at Watkins Glen, 4th, 5th, and 10th. If this does become a race about talent, we know what he's doing with this equipment, but if this comes down to talent, then good God, Jones might push for that. I mean, you go back to Sonoma, he took that car to 11th place. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities for Jones to do that here at this track that he was so good at.
Mention a question here from Andrew in the YouTube chat. He says, thoughts on betting Buescher to finish ahead of McDowell?
Oh yeah, definitely. I would definitely take that head to head. Really, it's kind of sad what's happened with McDowell. Now, the 28th place finish at Sonoma, that was pure. That him and Newman found each other somehow on the very last turn, and they both went from top 20 cars to finishing 28th, 29th. But McDowell didn't show up at Road America, and that was a track that he won at in the Xfinity Series. There's just so much more of a wider range of outcomes when it comes to McDowell than it does to Buescher, and I feel like Buescher is just a surefire safe bet for a top 20, if not a top 15.
Of course, if you have any questions for Phill and you're a member of Awesemo Plus, you can hop into our Slack channel. Just tag Phill in there. I actually will be in the office hours channel here following this show for taking any UFC question that you have. Of course, coming up at 4 o'clock, our UFC coverage will begin. Myself and Greg will be talking monkey knife fight. Then at 5 o'clock, it'll be myself and Pete Rogers Jr. talking about all your DFS related questions in terms of DraftKings and FanDuel. And then at 6 o'clock, Greg will be back with Gundacker to get you ready for tonight's MLB slate with MLB live before lock. Appreciate everyone tuning in here on a Saturday afternoon. Be sure as you exit out the show, hit that thumbs up button. It really does help us out a lot as well. So that is going to do it for this edition of the Awesemo NASCAR Strategy Show. Good luck to everyone with your NASCAR lineups, and we will talk to you on the next edition of the Awesemo NASCAR Strategy Show. Good day, everybody.